Yo, what is up guys? Welcome back to a brand new video. Today, back on F1 2020 again, breaking a world record around Bahrain International Circuit. You can see, currently I already have the world record, but this lap I'm gonna go slightly faster than my previous one. Braking into turn 1 at 100 meters, down to second gear, trail brake into the corner to get the car rotated around a very tight hairpin. Try to keep the back end stable through that almost flat out left-hander, and then going into turn 4, braking just before the curb start, down to fourth gear. Can use third gear as well, but makes it slightly harder on power. Up to sixth before this fast right left-hander, and then up to seventh before a hard braking zone into this right-hander again. Coming up a little hill now before we go downhill again into this next left-hander. Very easy to lock up the left front, down to first gear for a little bit of extra rotation. And then back onto the power. You can see I lost probably like half a tenth through there as we open the DRS for the final time this lap, braking just before 50 meters down to fourth gear. Short shift to fifth to keep the rear stable through here. Quite hard to keep the rear in balance on that exit. And now easy flat on the right, and then braking for another right. And you can use both fourth or fifth gear there, depending what you feel comfortable with. As we now head towards the final corner, we're gonna pick a braking point around 75 meters down to fourth gear, short shift to fifth, use a little bit of exit curb. Very hard to get that last corner right on the exit, but that's a lap around Bahrain. Now I'll show you guys my setup, and after we go in very detailed on how we managed to achieve this lap time. Setup wise, we had 3.8 wings, as you can see there. Works always quite well, 3.8 or 3.7, maybe 3.9, but I've personally feel that too unnecessary in the high speed. And then 50-52 diff, more or less always running 50-52 or 50-53 or 50-51, more or less. And geometry, 250 degrees on the front camber, and then 2 degrees on the rear camber. Quite a common thing. And then also the front toe and the rear toe are quite the same on every track. Springs, 1 on the front, like on most tracks, and then 9 on the rear. Rear is something you can play around with a little bit. 111 roll bar, 2.3 ride height. And then the brakes and tires, quite the same like usual. 100% brake pressure, 50% brake bias. And then tire pressure is minimum, like on all tracks. So yeah, let's head into a lot more detailed lap and explain how I managed to achieve a 1:23.9. Preparing the final corner as much as possible before you start your lap is crucial, of course. Very long straight before you head into turn 1. Short shift to fifth to minimize wheel spin, and then straighten the car up to open your DRS for the first time on this lap. As I said, very long straight, reaching top speeds of around 330 kph per hour. As we head into turn 1 braking point, you can see it's quite a bit before the 100 meters. I think it's around 110 meters, 115 meters more or less. So quite early, but obviously top speed very high, and you're heading into a hairpin, and then downshifting as fast as possible. It's 6 downshifts, and from such high speed it's quite hard. You can see I missed the apex a little bit. That's why I still have the brakes on once I hit the apex. I just simply went in a little bit too hot, but it's fine. We can carry the speed in through onto the exit basically, and then this is such a hard exit. Short shift to fourth, keep it in fourth, and then hit this curb exactly on the limit of the track limits. And then you can see I'm still on 80% throttle, so you just have to nurse the throttle through here. I need a very good feeling for the car. As we then correct the car, you can see counter steering on the exit exactly on the limits of the truck, of the white line basically. Outside of the tires, still just about touching the white line. As then we're gonna turn on our DRS for the second time this lap, heading into turn 4 now, braking just before the 100 meters, like half a meter before. 315 kph top speed as we now head into turn 4. You can see I went up to 51 brake bias just for this corner. I'm gonna go back to 50 after this corner, and then we're gonna bleed off the brakes to stabilize the car, removing some of that pitch once we come off the car. You can see no brake pressure on anymore on the right bottom as we hit the apex. We missed it by a few centimeters, maybe 1 or 2, as now again need to counter steer a bit on the exit. This exit kind of falls away, so it's really easy to lose the back end. As then again on the limit of the white line, yeah, otherwise you could get penalized, like you know what I mean. And then heading into the next fast left, right, left, basically turning in on the limits of the track before you start braking. As you can see, started braking just there. So basically turn in first before you start braking, and then bleed off the brakes. Don't want to put too much brake pressure on. And you can see I'm just about not going over the edge of the inside curb, because if you go over, it destabilizes the car. And then the same for here, but this time you don't even want to touch the red and white, because touching it creates so much rotation, which can be nice if you're running a very unnecessary setup, but this setup is a little bit too edgy to take that red and white curb, otherwise you're gonna lose the rear. And then this on the exit is basically the curb of death. Like, if you don't hit it right, you're gonna bounce off and you're gonna spin. So yeah, you can see there was more curb to use there, but it's so bumpy that I just don't want to use too much of it. You can see now, start braking at 275 kph. Before that right hand hairpin, you're pretty high on speed before you start braking, and then using a little bit of that entry curb on the left before turning in second gear through here, and then come off the brakes, basically start on throttle as soon as we hit the apex, the white line you can see there, as it's uphill. So you really need a good exit to maximize time gain. You can see delta is going green for us, and then not using too much of this curb as it just creates wheel spin. Then right here, opening this very difficult downhill left-hander as much as possible. You can see almost on the track limits, using a little bit more than just the curb, as we then go into this very difficult braking. So you can see braking quite early, as it is downhill from here and the track just falls away from you. It's really easy to lock the left front, and if you have a very oversteery setup, it's easy to lose the rear as you pitch the car. Missing the apex, going down to first gear, I think I lost around half a tenth just in this corner, because I missed the apex and I went in a little bit too deep. You could hear me lock up, so not ideal through here on this lap. You can see delta going red again, and then as soon as we straighten up the car, we go full throttle, as that's when the rear grip is on its maximum. And then we're gonna open the DRS to for the final time, final DRS zone of the track, as we head into this very difficult left-hander, braking just before the 50 meters, I would say around 65 meters, and then we're gonna go down to fourth gear for this 90 degree, it's not really 90 degree left-hander, as it's very flowing. So yeah, just need to try and keep the speed, and it's very easy to run wide, especially if you have a tailwind. Luckily in F1 there's no wind, but in real life you can see a lot of people go wide here if they have a tailwind, as it's quite unnecessary from nature already. And then on the exit, exactly on that white line, if you go on the curb, you're gonna lose grip, and that's not what you want in a corner that's asking so much from these outside tires. It's so long, so yeah, it's very tough on the right hand side, so you don't want to hit that curb, because you're gonna spin out or run wide, and then open up this next right hander as much as possible before we head into this flat out right. Even though it's flat out, you don't want to scrub off too much speed, so you still want to prepare it as much as possible. Hitting the apex there, minimize steering lock to keep the speed up as much as possible. All easy flat, but if you want to gain these last few of thousands or hundreds, it's necessary to not scrub too much speed off in these flat out corners. And then braking for this very difficult right-hander, absolutely on the track limits to open up that right-hander, and then don't want to put too much brake pressure on here, as you will lose the back end with a tricky setup. So don't want to pitch the car too much. You can see I go very early back on throttle to put the lock on the differential and to get the rear down, so we stabilize the car, and then correcting it a few times through the second last corner on the absolute limit of the track again. You can see on the white line, outside of the tire, just touching the white line is perfect, as if you go wider you're gonna get the track limit warning or an invalidation. Braking at, I would say, around 80 meters, looking at that 15 meter board, down to 4K. You can see again absolutely in the limit of the track, as we turn into the final corner, hitting the final apex perfectly. You don't want to take more curb as it will unsettle the car and reduce exit speed. And then short shift to 50, you can see I keep it on 80% throttle and now we go 100. You don't want to put your tire behind the arrow basically, as that's where you lose so much grip. So I'm just gonna stay on the edge of that curb for quite a while until the corner completely opens up. So you can see here, I keep on it, stay on it, stay on it, and then when the track opens up, boom, I go over it. And then we're an absolute limit of the track limits. And then we're gonna open up the DRS to finish our lap. And yeah, that's a lap around Bahrain International Circuit, the world record around Bahrain International Circuit. Hope you guys enjoyed this track guide, very precise track guide around Bahrain International Circuits. Make sure to like and subscribe if you want to see more, and see you guys next time. Ciao.